Hey guys, welcome to another planty video. In this one, I'm going to show you guys how to grow anthurium from seed. Take a look at my anthurium collection here. I've only been growing them for probably as long as 5 years, some maybe just 3 years, but I've gained a lot of experience that I want to share with you guys as I've been having success in terms of growing anthurium from seed to seedling and hopefully to maturity. If you want to increase your anthurium collection by the hundreds, this is by far the fastest way to do so for free. And here's what's mind-blowing. You can even achieve variegation from this method. If I can do this, you can definitely do it too. And I'm going to show you exactly what to do step by step. Okay, I'm going to make sure I keep things as simple as possible. This is what pollen looks like on an anthurium inflow. When the inflow is ready to receive pollen, instead of pollen, you're going to see stigmatic fluid, which are little droplets that emerge from the inflow itself. That's when you know your anthurium is ready to be pollinated. All you have to do is dab some pollen onto that stigmatic fluid, and once it has successfully been pollinated, the inflow does not die off. Eventually, you'll begin to see these tiny raised bumps starting to emerge on the same successfully pollinated inflow. Once pollination has happened, these little bumps or berries continue to increase in size over time. Now, this can take a really short time or it can take a super long time. And I'll show you examples of each coming up later on in the video. Let's just take one tiny step back. How do you even know your anthurium is ready for pollinating or is mature enough to go through that pollination process? A big eye-opener for me was that some fertilizers make anthurium flower prematurely. For the highest success rate, you need to make sure that your anthurium is mature enough to go through the entire process. So the first thing you want to check for is that your anthurium leaves are growing from caterpillars and not from the petiole. And my rule of thumb is to wait for the second inflow to appear before I even start considering that anthurium for pollination. This is a highly stressful process for the plant in that it consumes a lot of energy. You might even see the plant start to shed leaves and stuff. So you want to make sure that your plant is actually ready for pollination. On the screen is my Anthurium crystallinum. This is an example of a mature Anthurium ready for pollination. It has multiple leaves and it's sizable. Now that you're set up for success, let's continue. So basically, your inflow has now become an infructescence in that it is bearing berries or fruit. And once you pop these berries, within them you can find one seed or multiple seeds. I personally harvest these berries when they are just about to fall off themselves or at least 80% emerged. Or I can see the white base on the seed. Again, for the highest success rate, you'll want to make sure your berries are also mature. I would definitely advise that you don't rush this process. Allow the berries to ripen to the point where they are falling off just to give yourself the highest success rate. Here I've harvested some berries and I'm going to show you how I started the germination process. I started by placing all the berries onto a paper towel. What that does is it absorbs all the plant matter, all the wet plant matter, I should say, from the berry and just aids in the separation of the seed from the berry. So one berry usually gives one seed, but there are instances where a berry can give two seeds. In this batch, I got one berry that produces two seeds. I'll point it out for you. It should be not this one, this one. This was the only one that produced two seeds. So the research that I did surrounding anthurium germination, the majority of the research I would say was done on YouTube. I will post a couple links in the description in case you want to have a look at that, as well as I got a lot of information from the Welcome to the Jungle book from NSC Tropical. It is a time-consuming process. As you can see, you have to kind of go around to each berry individually, pop each one, and then sort of clean this teeny tiny seed. I'm now just grouping all of them together so that I could extract each seed. This is what is left after extraction, you should see all that clear, gooey plant matter still surrounding some of the seeds or just in the general area. I'm now going to remove each seed and place it in some water just to continue trying to get off as much wet plant matter as I can. Now, this is to ensure that there isn't rot when I place it in moss to begin germination. You don't want to have anything decaying while the seeds are trying to germinate. Now, just a point to note that dirt is on the outside of this dish, not on the inside. The inside is sterile, and I cover these seeds and leave them in water for 24 hours to hydrate as much as possible before I put them in moss. Now, the cover is to ensure that no predators eat the seeds or nothing falls into the water to contaminate the seeds to encourage rot. I then place the entire dish on the second to last shelf. So it's pretty low down on this plant shelf, so it receives shade, but it receives west-facing light in this spot. So I'm just trying to give the seeds the best chance possible. I saw this method from Unplanned Parenthood on YouTube. I will post a link to that video in the description. And basically, you just leave the seeds to soak for 24 hours or so until they plump. So this is the next day. Oh, I came in to check the seeds. They did get a little darker, so I'm worried about rot at this point. And, I'm curious as to if any of the seeds have perished. But fortunately, they were all fine. They actually, I mean, the size change is negligible, but they did increase in size, as you can see here, compared to when I originally extracted them from the berries. They look like teeny tiny kidney beans, but at least you can see the hydration really has started, and I believe I could just go ahead and place them in a bed of moss now that I am leaving a little wetter than usual, only because I have it in a west facing spot and it is super hot right now. And I make sure that I fluff this moss to make sure there's enough aeration. What I'm about to do next is just place the seeds in that bed of moss. However, they seem to need another rinse over, as you could see some plant matter still streaming from that seed. So I'm just going to place all of them in another dish of water, rinse them over again so that there's nothing streaming from the seed, and place them in the moss itself. So I'm just going to lay them out probably about 2 centimeters apart and just place them right back in the same location that the seeds were hydrating in. This is again receiving west facing light, but some shade from the plants above, and I just added a tag and kept it in that humidity dome. Just a point to note, my mother plant is placed on a shelf just behind the shelf that the seeds are on. So I'm placing the seeds in a spot to germinate that is not too different, while I'm hoping, from where the mother plant seems to be happy. Within a week, my Vitirifolium seeds started growing roots or germinating. I was so shocked at how fast this happened for these Vitirifolium seeds as opposed to my Anthurium Ace of Spades hybrid that took more than a month or maybe within a month to actually start germinating. The faster growth rate of the Vitrifolium seeds continued throughout the entire growing cycle, where the germination for the Vitrifolium started in last year, November, as opposed to the Ace of Spades hybrid that started last year, July. That's 4 months apart, and I potted them up the same time as you'd see later on in this video. As my Ace of Spades seedling started progressing, I noticed something super exciting, which was variegation on a couple seedlings. Well, it was really on 2 seedlings, but still, this just goes to show how exciting it can be to grow anthuriums from seed, in that the genetic variability is so diverse that you just never know what characteristics are going to come to the forefront when you grow from seed. At this point, I was super excited and I figured these seedlings were here to stay, so I started shopping for a mini greenhouse to eventually pot them up in and continue to grow them out in. in hopefully what will be ideal conditions. I got this one from FCMC in Trinity, and I will link everything in the description. I should say though that this particular greenhouse came with a bunch of parts that required assembly that was quite intimidating at first because it was packs on packs of parts of various sizes, and to be quite honest the instructions were not easily laid out, but once you give it a little thought and you get going it does become easier. The entire system, no, the joining parts, I should say, were made of plastic. The framing was made of metal. In hindsight, I probably wouldn't purchase this one again because I found it to be quite flimsy. It wasn't as stable as I thought it would be. The shelving was just made of this wire arched on either side to rest onto a shelf like that. So I feel like in terms of stability, it's not the most sound. So if it falls over, you're basically messed up. I guess for 100 TT or basically 15 US, I can't complain. It was a cheaper buy, and it was the only thing I could have found locally to sort of create that microclimate, sorry, that these seedlings would require, as opposed to just having everything grown in sealed plastic containers. I found, this was just a little more organized and a little more appealing to me to give it a go. But I don't know, you check it out and see, how you find it works for you. I'm also wary that this plastic cover will get mildew over time as I'm trying to, or as the goal is to maintain 100% humidity in there. So just things to bear in mind with respect to maintenance. My plan is to reuse seed trays inside of there for easy potting up after. So in a video that I would link below, I would show you guys how I make my anthurium seedling mix. This particular seed tray, however, seems to be too big. It is a really good quality one, though. It is hard plastic. It's not that papery plastic, so I was hoping to use that. Unfortunately, I won't be able to, but I'll figure out what I pot up in this, or maybe I could buy a humidity dome cover. That's what I'm thinking. So like one of these, and maybe just create that microclimate similar to how my prop box is set up. But anyway, here is where I place the mini greenhouse in my plant room for now. It will be able to receive some gentle west-facing light, so I'm just testing out positions for when I actually do put these seedlings up into my anthurium seedling mix. So this is what the setup looks like, and I'm going to head over to Grow Right. Remember, you can mention Candy in store to get a discount at Grow Right. I popped in here to get more supplies. I also doubled back to FCMC and I found this 5 pack of seed trays for 40 TT or 6 US, and I was pleasantly surprised that they fit perfectly in this greenhouse. Maybe it was sold together, but at the time when I purchased the greenhouse, I didn't notice these, so I was happy to find these just, I think it was like last week I went, but it is that papery plastic. So again, it's another flimsy product, but I'm hoping that it just gets the job done for maybe a couple months or so until I actually put them in proper nursery pots. This is my anthurium seedling mix that I keep mentioning. I will link the video below where I actually make this mix to show you guys. So the plan is to use a pointed spade to add the anthurium seedling mix to the seed trays and probably fill each hole halfway up just to give me some wiggle room to backfill when I place the seedlings in. I have not actually seen the roots on the seedlings as yet to really know if these containers, or sorry, these seed trays will work, but we can look forward to that later on where I would show you how I take each one out and assess them to see if they can be potted up into soil mix. Now, I didn't rush this process because, I'm a big fan of having good roots first. You all will know that I always preach this in my plant shows videos. I always focus on root growth before foliage. So we'll see how it goes when I start taking them out of moss. So the first thing I'm going to do is get this seed tray ready to receive the seedlings. So this is it basically filled. I'm just going to clean it up by just ensuring that all the mix is within the holes, get things neat, clean, just to have the process seamless and not have too much cleanup after. I'm literally just putting the excess mix into the tray, like so, using my finger, where I really should be using a glove. But you get the point. I'm just shaking the tray to evenly distribute the medium in the tray to level the soil line. Okay, so we're ready to start adding seedlings. I'm gonna reach for my first container. This is my allocation nebula that I'm moving out of the way, by the way, in case you're curious as to what it is. To the back here is one of these small containers that I have the Anthurium vitrifolium seedlings in. It is sharing a container with some extra Ace of Spades hybrid seedlings. So they were pretty tiny, so I didn't see a problem having them share a container. I got this container from either Excellent Stores or Fair and Square. I will link it in the description below. But these are the two sets of seedlings. Those are the Ace of Spades hybrids. And to the right of it, you will see how big the Vitirifolium seedlings have gotten. They have multiple leaves on them, and they are still blowing my mind. In another plant chores video that I will link in the description, you'll see that I transferred the Vitrifolium seedlings out of the glass cloche or glass dome that it originally germinated in because the seedlings basically needed more height. They were outgrowing that dome. So I just picked up the moss in its entirety and placed it in this box. And well, now I'm removing it to start uprooting them to place into the anthurium seedling mix. So I just removed the cover, placed it on the shelf just to give myself some more working room. And I'm going to just gently start removing the moss and assess the roots to see if they are ready to be potted up. Now, the research showed that I shouldn't wait too long to get these into a soil mix, so I'm not going to fuss if the roots aren't to my liking. In hindsight, I probably wouldn't use the glass dome. I really didn't think this would work. This was the first time that I was trying to grow anthurium from seeds, so I didn't have high hopes. So I didn't put much thought into what the end game would be. But in the future, I would probably set the seeds in a large container so that I don't have to uproot them to place into a bigger container just to give them more stable conditions. The roots look pretty good as you can see here, so I'm going to go ahead and pot them up here into the seedling tray. What I also found in the research is that I don't have to use moss, so I might experiment next time with the germination process and have them germinate in tree fern, like just pure tree fern instead of moss, because I found the moss so difficult to remove from these super tiny, tiny roots. I'm sure a ton ripped off, but it's so small I can't find any right now. When I said that this was the first time that I was trying to grow anthurium from seed, what I meant was last year, July, was the first time I started setting seeds with no expectations of it being successful. So I was constantly pollinating once the opportunity presented itself, and shockingly, they all started growing and seedlings started emerging around the same time where I could confidently say that, hey, I think I have a methodology that works now for anthurium germination, and that's how the idea of this video came up. So what I'm doing now is just spritzing the vitrifolium seedlings just to give them some hydration so that they don't dry out. And I'm checking another smaller container that has my Anthurium Brielle by Crystallinum hybrids. This was another one that I didn't think would take off. These seeds were set in August last year, that's August 2024. And because of how small the leaves were here, I didn't think they were so well rooted in the moss. I was having a hard time trying to remove these. I definitely could not pull from the top. I would have ripped a bunch of roots off. So I'm trying to move the moss around the seedling to give myself some more space to try and find where the roots are actually growing and then follow the root and pull in that direction. So here I am removing the sphagnum moss and getting this one out. Here's a closer look at the seedling and the foliage. There aren't much markings on the foliage as yet, but it does present to be a little darker, darker than the vitrifolium anyway. But I was struggling to get this last piece of moss off, but you'll see the roots on this tiny seedling shortly. Here it is. I did break off parts of it, unfortunately, but the roots in these seedlings in general were quite long. I was so shocked. Here's that broken root that I mentioned. I was even unsure if these seedlings may be too big for this tree, but this is all I have on hand, so I will just probably wrap the roots within each little hole and backfill. But I don't know, comment below and tell me if you feel like this tree is too small for this type or this amount of roots. I was able to tuck those roots in by spiraling them, and I backfilled. This is them watered in. I did not have my great white on hand here at the house. I'm going to have to double back to add that because you all know I swear by using that product. Also, I was pleasantly surprised that the seed trays actually fit into the grooves of these shelves. So this has added a little more stability because the weight of the tree is stabilizing the greenhouse a lot more than I expected. So these were some that was still outstanding. I am now gonna try and twirl these roots into these holes as well. And here is a closer look of one of them that has really nice veining already starting. These are quite velvety. The water is masking the actual texture of the leaves, but they are velvety and shimmery. This is one of the larger ones in this batch. Now I'm going to tackle my biggest batch of seedlings. These are the Ace of Spades hybrids. I got the mother plant from San Antonio Farms and it came pollinated. The berries developed in my care, so I don't know which plant is the pollen parent, but if you've been to San Antonio Farms, you will know the sky is the limit there. Your guess is as good as mine, but these are my biggest seedlings. These are the ones that I set in July last year, so they've gotten a good 7 months to grow undisturbed in moss in this container. So I'm gonna show you guys some highlights that these are presenting. Some really nice red veins already, dark crimson leaves as the emergence, and I think some of them are large enough to be potted up into a nursery pot, and the smaller ones I will put in a seed tray. So this is just a closer look at the roots in these. They are pretty dense. This was one of the larger seedlings. I just went ahead and potted this one in a nursery pot. Hopefully it'll start sizing up nicely and continuing to push that red foliage. I will keep you guys posted on Instagram. These are the ones that I managed to untangle. I saved all the broken roots to show you guys how intense. This is the most nerve-wracking process, trying to remove these seedlings from the sphagnum moss. It is not for the faint of heart, but here I am. This is all the moss that I've removed from under those first batch of seedlings that you saw there. So I'm trying to give myself as much wiggle room for the rest, but I think I'm going to call it quits for today. Here's a closer look at the backs of these. These are super, super shimmery. So I feel it might be an Ace by Crystallinum hybrid. So the larger ones I was able to pot up in their own individual nursery pots, and I feel I'm going to call it quits there for today. I will keep you guys posted on Instagram. I more than likely will pot those up off camera. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned a thing or two. Please comment below if you have any tips for me. If you've done this before, what are your thoughts on the process? To me, it is so nerve-wracking, but you know, it's fulfilling for me. I really genuinely love this hobby. I really, by the way, love how this mini greenhouse is working out now in terms of storing all the seedlings in one place. So, you know, if you do get it, I would love to discuss, you know, how you set yours up. But this is the end of this video. I hope you guys got some relatable information and useful information. I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for viewing.